Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most talked about issues currently shaping the national conversation in South Africa, the Employment Equity Act and President Cyril Ramaphosa's latest remarks on it. His statement has sparked widespread debate, drawing reactions from across the political and economic spectrum, and it's essential that we unpack what it all really means, not just on paper, but for real people, real businesses, and the future of South Africa. Recently, President Ramaphosa took to the airwaves and social media platforms to clarify his administration's position on the Employment Equity Act. He said plainly that the act prohibits unfair discrimination and corrects past inequalities. Now, to many, these words might sound like political rhetoric, something you hear often in speeches. But in reality, they point to one of the most crucial socio-economic balancing acts in our country's history. South Africa, with its painful legacy of apartheid, is still healing. And part of that healing means addressing imbalances in the workplace, not just through slogans, but through tangible, legislative measures. The Employment Equity Act was introduced to promote equal opportunity and fair treatment in employment through the elimination of unfair discrimination. It also requires employers to implement affirmative action measures to redress the disadvantages in employment experienced by designated groups. These groups include Black people, women, and persons with disabilities. But for many, the purpose and impact of the law have become obscured in political spin and public misunderstanding. That's where the president stepped in, aiming to remind citizens why this legislation exists and why it's still relevant. President Ramaphosa stressed that the law is not about revenge. It's not about replacing one group with another. Instead, it's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of race, gender, or background, gets a fair chance. And that's important, because while South Africa's constitution guarantees equality, the playing field is still far from level. Decades of structural exclusion can't be undone overnight. And so, the Employment Equity Act is meant to be a tool for systemic correction, not a weapon of division. But despite this intention, not everyone is on board. Some critics argue that the law might create reverse discrimination, making it harder for certain groups to get hired or promoted. There are business leaders who worry about compliance costs and red tape. Others are concerned that the push for equity might come at the expense of meritocracy. These are valid concerns, but they also miss the broader point. Equality of opportunity doesn't mean a lowering of standards, it means making sure everyone has a fair shot to meet those standards. Let's take a moment to reflect on the numbers. While South Africa has made some progress in transformation, senior management positions in many sectors remain disproportionately white and male. According to the Commission for Employment Equity's most recent report, Black Africans make up nearly 80% of the country's economically active population, yet they hold less than 25% of top management positions in the private sector. Women, who are 51% of the population, occupy only around 23% of these positions. These figures clearly indicate that equity in the workplace remains an elusive goal. President Ramaphosa argued that if we want a growing, inclusive economy, then we cannot afford to leave talent behind. He reminded South Africans that economic growth and social justice go hand in hand. If entire communities continue to be excluded from meaningful participation in the economy, then social unrest, inequality, and unemployment will persist. In this sense, the Employment Equity Act is not just a moral imperative, it's an economic strategy. And he didn't stop there. He also emphasized that the law requires companies to examine their own structures, reflect on who they are hiring, promoting, and developing, and take active steps to correct disparities. That might involve mentorship programs, fair recruitment practices, and making sure promotions are accessible to all employees, not just a privileged few. Importantly, it also means tracking and reporting on progress, because what gets measured, gets managed. The president's comments come at a sensitive time. With the general election approaching, issues of race, inequality, and identity are becoming more politically charged. Some opposition parties have accused the ANC of using the Employment Equity Act to cling to power or to distract from its failures in service delivery, unemployment, and governance. But even critics acknowledge that the core idea behind the law, fairness in the workplace, is something most South Africans support in principle. So, what does this mean for ordinary South Africans? For workers, it may mean greater protections and more opportunities for advancement. For companies, it means a responsibility to build workplaces that reflect the country's diversity, not as a box-ticking exercise, but as a moral and economic necessity. And for the nation as a whole, it represents another step towards becoming the just and equitable society promised in our Constitution. President Ramaphosa's speech was, at its heart, a call for unity, a plea for South Africans to see transformation not as a threat, but as a shared national project. He wants businesses, civil society, and ordinary citizens to partner with government in building a more inclusive economy. That means moving beyond tokenism, beyond compliance for compliance's sake, and embracing transformation as a vital force for progress. At the same time, we must be vigilant. The success of the Employment Equity Act depends on transparency, enforcement, and continuous engagement. There's no room for corruption or manipulation. Implementation must be honest and grounded in real data, not politics. And that's where you, the public, come in. Your voice, your experiences, and your vigilance will determine whether this law lives up to its promise. So, what do you think? Has the Employment Equity Act made a difference in your life or workplace? Do you believe it's still necessary in today's South Africa? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, we'd love to hear from you. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on the issues that matter. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next time.